It began with a spark, and that spark ignited into a fire that illuminated the skies of the Middle East. Missiles soaring, sirens screaming, families taking cover in bunkers. The world watched with bated breath as two mighty forces, Iran and Israel, engaged in one of the most vicious escalations in recent history. But what really sparked this war? Who fired first? And most importantly, who's right and who's wrong? In this video, we dive into the actual story of the 2025 Iran-Israel war. We'll dissect the timeline, the reasons, the truth that won't come from the media, and finally, we'll reveal the answer to the question that's splitting the world in half. If we want to know about this war, we need to go back, way back. The tension between Iran and Israel is not new. It has been in the making for decades, rooted deeply in ideology, religion, geopolitics, and power. Iran, an Islamic republic with a Shia population, has publicly denounced Israel since the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Israel, a Jewish state, sees Iran as its most lethal adversary. Why? Because Iran sponsors influential anti-Israel forces such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and assorted Shia militias in Syria and Iraq. Israel, for its part, has conducted hundreds of clandestine operations, air raids, and assassinations of Iranian scientists and military leaders. But something more deadly lies beneath it all: nuclear weapons. Iranian nuclear aspirations have made Israel and the West anxious. Israel has always been adamant: we will never let Iran acquire a nuclear bomb. And Iran? They claim to be constructing nuclear power, but the reality, many believe, is much more nefarious. The world has witnessed this silent war for decades. But in April 2025, the silence was broken. On April 13, 2025, at night, the world was changed. At precisely 2:17 a.m., alarms sounded throughout Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Haifa. In what can only be termed as historic, Iran fired more than 300 drones and missiles specifically at Israel. It was the very first time ever that Iran had attacked Israel directly from its own soil, not via proxies, not via militias, but directly. Why now? Iranian sources said the attack was a response to an Israeli airstrike against the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, 2 weeks prior. 7 top IRGC commanders, including General Mohammad Reza Zahedi, a senior member of Iran's Quds Force, were killed in that airstrike. Iran referred to the airstrike as terrorism. Israel referred to it as a defensive operation. But Iran promised revenge, and on April 13th, it delivered. Miraculously, with the help of Israel's Iron Dome, the David Sling, and assistance from the US and allies, 99% of projectiles were shot down. There was only light damage, but the message was delivered: we are no longer playing in the shadows. Iran-Israel did not take much time to retaliate. On the evening of April 19, 2025, 6 days later, Israel retaliated with a counterattack. It was a measured, finite, but very symbolic strike. Israeli F-35 stealth aircraft entered Iranian skies and struck at military radar sites, missile stores, and a missile plant south of Isfahan, a location close to Iran's disputed nuclear sites. Iran reported its air defense systems brought down a number of Israeli drones. Israel reported success with minimal collateral damage. The world held its breath as two of the Middle East's most powerful players danced on the brink of all-out war, but neither wanted it to happen. US leaders intervened. European leaders urged restraint. Russia and China, Iran's allies, made strong protests. The United Nations convened emergency meetings, and in the midst of it all, millions of innocent civilians, frightened, caught between two titans. The Iran-Israel war didn't just shake up the Middle East, it rocked the globe. The United States issued blanket support of Israel's right to defend itself. Russia condemned Israel's attack on the Iranian consulate and threatened aggression. China called for maximum restraint and hinted at tacit support for Iran's side. European states were split. Some placed the blame on Iran, others on Israel's move in Damascus. But in the Arab world, opinions were mixed. Some governments remained silent. Some individuals, especially in Lebanon, Iraq, and Syria, applauded Iran for defying Israeli aggression. Others, like the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Jordan, were filled with fear, afraid that this war would spill into their nations, afraid that this would trigger a regional disaster. And here's the cold reality. If Israel had acted more assertively, or if Iran had attacked again, this easily could have become World War III. We examine how the war affected daily life in Israel and Iran, how proxy militaries responded, the cyber war in the shadows, and what the actual casualties of this war are, beyond bombs and missiles. The missiles may have ceased to fly, at least for the time being, but the true war, the war of lives, of terror, of survival day to day, was only just starting. Behind the boom, behind the politics, were millions of human beings stuck in the middle. We reveal the cyber attacks, the proxy militias, the economic losses, and the quiet psychological war that doesn't make headlines, but scarring us forever. While bombs filled the skies, a quiet war raged in cyberspace. Iran's elite cyber divisions, APT-33 and APT-34, mounted several cyber attacks against Israeli infrastructure. Water supplies were knocked out in segments of southern Israel. A large hospital network was briefly brought down. Disinformation campaigns inundated Israeli social media. Israel struck back, hard. Mossad's cyber department and the highly skilled Unit 8200 hit Iranian oil refineries, financial databases, and even temporarily disabled part of Iran's national internet. This wasn't science fiction. This was actual cyber warfare. No spilled physical blood, but billions lost, and terror just the same. In today's world, war isn't fought with bombs. It's fought with keyboards. And in this drama, both countries were armed to the teeth. As might have been expected, Iran didn't go it alone. Its proxy troops, militias armed, trained, and financed by Tehran, came into play. In Lebanon, Hezbollah struck with rockets into northern Israel, causing border skirmishes. In Syria, Iranian-backed militias attacked Israeli positions in the Golan Heights. In Iraq, pro-Iranian mobs threatened U.S. bases, forcing a temporary withdrawal. And in Yemen, the Houthis fired ballistic missiles at Israel from more than 1,000 miles away. This was no longer a bilateral war. It was becoming a multi-front crisis. Israel retaliated with airstrikes across Lebanon and Syria, but cautiously, calmly. It did not want to pour fuel into the entire region's fire. But civilians paid the cost. In southern Lebanon, families were forced to leave their homes. In Gaza, renewed fighting resulted in dozens killed. And in Tel Aviv, schools were shut for days. The war was building, even if it wasn't yet officially declared. There are figures in every war, death tolls, figures on damage. But behind each figure, there's a face. More than 200 civilians were wounded in panic and secondary explosions in Iran. Oil prices shot through the roof. Supermarkets ran out of food. People flocked to withdraw cash from ATMs, worried about U.S. sanctions. More than 100 were hospitalized in Israel, not from direct hits, but from panic attacks, stress-related trauma, and injuries from bunkers. The psychological pressure on the population, children in particular, was unimaginable. Neighborhoods surrounding militia headquarters in Syria and Lebanon were bombed, even though they were far from the front lines. And still, the governments held their ground. Iranian state television described the attack as a glorious act of resistance. Israeli media greeted the counterattack as a precise, intelligent response. But for the rest of us, no glory, no fanfare, only fear. As the physical conflict progressed, another conflict ran on our screens, the war for the truth. Social media erupted in doctored videos, AI-generated photos, and bot-propelled hashtags. Iranian accounts alleged Israel attacked a children's hospital, a video later proven to be a 2014 Gaza war. Influencers in Israel posted fake news videos of Iranian missile factories blowing up, later found to be videos of explosions at an industrial fire in India. The facts were casualties of the information war. And what about the platforms? They couldn't keep pace. A post would be flagged or taken down only after millions had seen it, inciting hate, fear, and disinformation. This media manipulation was not only perilous, it was calculated. Both Iran and Israel knew, control the narrative, control the battlefield. But what about reality? What about facts? That's what we're here to uncover. As Iran and Israel clashed, global markets panicked. Oil prices spiked by 18% in just 48 hours. Stock markets in New York, London, and Tokyo plunged. Airlines canceled flights to the region. The Suez Canal, a vital global shipping lane, was placed under high alert. Even nations with no interest in the war, such as India, Brazil, and Germany, felt economic reverberations. Gas costs increased, trade decreased, panic grew, and in Washington, D.C., President Elena Thomas issued a solemn declaration. We will not let a regional war escalate into a global disaster. All parties need to stand down immediately. In the meantime, Russia and China conducted joint naval exercises with Iran in the Persian Gulf, a warning message to America and Israel. The United Nations voted for immediate de-escalation, but like so many others before, it was disregarded. It was apparent now. The Iran-Israel war was more than a Middle East occurrence. It was a geopolitical earthquake, with tremors and aftershocks felt globally. We provide the ultimate answers. Who was correct, who was incorrect, and what comes next? We'll dissect the reality of the choices made by both nations, the ethical burden of every strike, and where this war takes the future of the Middle East. Two countries, one region, thousands of years of heritage, and yet in 2025, they were on the edge of a disaster that could have altered the world. Now that the dust has cleared, at least for a while, there is one last question. Who was correct and who was incorrect? We analyzed the war's moral, political, and strategic aspects. And then, it's up to you. On April 1st, 2025, the Israeli military carried out an airstrike on Iran's diplomatic complex in the Syrian capital of Damascus. That complex, Israel said, was home to senior IRGC Quds Force commanders who were busy planning attacks on Israeli and American targets. Iran had something different in mind. They said the complex was a diplomatic facility covered under international law. 7 of its top military officers were killed. So what does international law have to say? If the building was a consulate, as it appears to have been, attacking it is a breach of the Vienna Convention. But if it was being used for military purposes, then it loses that status. Verdict? The truth probably lies somewhere in between. The building was a command center and also a consulate, a legal middle ground Israel took advantage of. Iran struck back with a direct missile and drone attack against Israel on April 13th. That's where most draw the line, a sovereign country attacking another directly, unprovoked. But again, we have to wonder, was it really unprovoked? Both sides say the same thing, self-defense. Israel claims it bombed the Iranian base to stop terror operations. Iran claims it bombed back in defense of sovereignty and honor. But there's a distinction between defending yourself and escalating a regional conflict. Israel's attack was surgical, targeting people they perceived to be a threat. Iran's attack, although symbolic, sent more than 300 missiles and drones, threatening thousands of civilian lives. So who crossed the line? If we measure by magnitude, Iran's counterattack was record-breaking and escalating. If we measure by law, Israel's opening attack was possibly a breach of diplomatic protocol. But in public opinion courts, the dichotomy is sharp. Israel's actions are widely perceived in the West as being defensive. In the Islamic world, Iran is admired as having stood firm against perceived aggression. Truth, as ever, is not one-sided. Let us not forget who paid the price. In Israel, while air defenses kept masses of casualties from occurring, psychological trauma and disruption ran rampant. Children did not sleep, schools closed, businesses collapsed briefly. In Iran, anxiety over additional Israeli or American retaliation pushed the economy into a tailspin. Food and gasoline prices skyrocketed. The middle class took on a beating. The most hurt were the poor. And beyond both, in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza, Iranian-sponsored elements dragged locals into a conflict they never requested. So when we wonder who was hurt the worst, the response is everyone, ordinary citizens, civilians. They had no voice in any of that, but they paid the price for every decision. What did each side achieve? Iran demonstrated to the world that it was not hesitant to target directly, gained symbolic backing in various corners of the Muslim world, but it also revealed its missile weaknesses and upset neutral nations. Israel proved the strength of its defense systems and intelligence networks, exhibited restraint by refraining from escalating to all-out war, but was also criticized internationally for the Damascus bombing and risked alienating regional allies. In the end, no one was really a winner, only evidence that both sides will do more than ever before. Here's the truth, based on documented facts, not emotion. Iran stepped over a red line that is very, very dangerous when they fired a direct missile assault against Israel. That type of act, by any measure, was a serious escalation. Israel attacked a diplomatic building, but possessed intelligence indicating it was being used for war planning. It was legally questionable and morally nuanced behavior, but not entirely unfair. So who was more in the wrong? Iran's reaction, understandable on an emotional level, was strategically reckless. It put civilians at risk, increased the threat of regional war, and supplied Israel with diplomatic cover. But Israel as well overstepped by breaking international norms in its attack on Damascus. So the judgment is this: both sides made dangerous choices, but Iran's retaliation endangered more lives and risked wider war, making its actions more harmful in the bigger picture. Still, this doesn't mean one is a hero and the other a villain. Both countries acted out of fear, ideology, and survival, and both are caught in a cycle that the world must break, or else we'll all pay the price. The world has moved on, but the danger hasn't disappeared. Here's what to expect in the coming months. Iran will step up backing of proxy militias, particularly in Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen. Israel will redouble its efforts in intelligence and preemptive strikes, potentially at nuclear sites. The US, Russia, and China will keep chipping away at the region, not for peace but for influence. And the people, the ones who count most, will live in fear once more. So what can be done? Airstrikes must give way to dialogue. Propaganda must give way to accountability. And truth, not tribalism, should guide our judgment. You've heard the facts, you've seen the timelines, and now the truth is in your hands. Was this war justified? Could it have been avoided? And more importantly, are we ready for what's next if diplomacy fails again? This wasn't just about Iran and Israel. It was about the delicacy of peace in a world full of weapons and pride. And if we don't learn now, the following war won't be regional, it may be international. If you learned something from this video, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. Help disseminate truth in a world swimming in noise. This was Reality Speeches, and we tell truth, even when it is inconvenient.